4 years of age, Erin was just a bundle of energy. She was very curious, and especially when her dad came in one day with a wrapped package. And Erin, little girl, just kind of looked up at her dad and said, "Dad, what's in the package?" And the dad was a little bit hesitant, but said, "But can you keep a secret?" "Oh, Daddy, I can keep a secret," said the little girl. And so the dad began to unwrap the gift, and it was a string of pearls. It was beautiful. And the dad looked at the little girl and says, "Okay, this is for your mom, but you remember, you've got to keep a secret." "Oh, I can keep a secret, Daddy. I can keep a secret." Well, that night, as the mom was putting little Erin to bed, she was reading her a story. And in the story, there was a princess. And the princess was wearing a string of pearls. And the mom said to her little daughter, she says, "Isn't she pretty?" And the little girl said, "Oh, she is pretty, but not as pretty as you're going to be when Daddy gives you that gift of a string of pearls." You know how hard it is to keep a secret? I can remember when my daughters were younger and they would help me buy a gift for my wife, and they would help me wrap it, and they would help write out the card for them. They didn't want to hold that secret. And the longer they had to wait, the more palpable was that waiting. Well, as we talked about, a couple weeks ago, we started this sermon series that we're just calling The End. I told you it's like a TV show or a really good book. You've got your plot right there at the opening scene where Jesus is baptized. And then you move quickly to his first healing act that focuses on humanity, on how we're supposed to treat each other, not on rules and doctrine. Things move quickly here. That's the point in the Gospel of Mark. He is a master storyteller, and he doesn't want us to lose interest because it's all about the end. It's all about getting us to the end of the story. And that end is Easter. Because one cannot understand all these stories that we are reading until we get to April 1st, which is Easter Sunday morning. Now, we're not to Easter yet. So to get there, what the Gospel of Mark does is kind of drops these hints. I like to call them clues that just keep us reading. We've already been introduced to this concept called the Messianic secret. It's sprinkled throughout the Gospel of Mark. And today, the passage that Becky's going to read to us is a perfect illustration of the Messianic secret. So, Becky.
Today's reading will be from Mark chapter 1, verses 40 through 45. And it's Jesus cleanses a leper. A leper came to him, begging him and kneeling. He said to him, "If you choose, you can make me clean." Moved with pity, Jesus stretched out his hand and touched him and said to him, "I do choose. Be made clean." Immediately the leprosy left him, and he was made clean. After sternly warning him, he sent him away at once, saying to him, "See that you say nothing to anyone, but go, show yourself to the priest and offer for your cleansing what Moses commanded as a testimony to them." But he went out and began to proclaim it freely and to spread the word, so that Jesus could no longer go into the town openly, but stayed out in the country, and people came to him from every quarter.
Thank you. The Messianic secret. You only find it here in the Gospel of Mark. This sermon series throughout Lent is focused squarely on Mark's storytelling ability. In fact, I've used a method that some of you are probably familiar with in Hollywood called the story arc, where you start with a conflict and it carries on for a few episodes and then it ends. Well, as we know, we're not watching a TV show. We are concentrated on this story from the Gospel of Mark and how he tells the story of Jesus' ministry. So what we have here immediately is conflict. There's a secret that Jesus does not want anyone to know. And then we got an end point, which will make all sense, as I talked about, on Easter Sunday morning and April 1st. At this point, we will understand the secrecy of the Messianic secret. All of the understanding will be revealed at that point. But we've got to get through the month of March first. We've got to get through the season of Lent first. And so that means that we've got to keep on reading. The only way to understand this secret, the only way to have this mystery revealed to us, is to just put our nose right into the story and just keep on reading, to move forward. Today we have the temptation, really, of skipping to the last page. Every year, for Easter, my mom would always put together Easter baskets. And it included all kinds of wonderful chocolate, especially Reese's peanut butter cups and jelly beans. And as I did with the children, she would leave these clues. We would have this clue on our nightstand, and so we'd pick up one clue and we'd go on to another one that would say, in the oven. So we'd look in the oven and it'd say, go on to this one and this one. And it was so much fun that my daughters now have that as we're searching for Easter baskets. Well, there was one Easter morning, I remember waking up in the middle of the night and going to the bathroom, and I noticed something kind of caught my eye. I looked over, and in the bathtub was my Easter basket. Chocolates and jelly beans and all kinds of sugar, and I'll tell you what, it looked delectable. It looked wonderful. And so when I got up in the morning, I kind of read my clue, and I kind of nonchalantly walked to the next clue because I knew where my basket was. And between the second and third clue, I heard my sister yell from the bathroom, "Found it!" And I realized, hey, wait a minute, that wasn't my basket that I saw in the middle of the night. Well, at that point, I double-timed it, triple-timed it to go through the clues because I wanted to make sure that she didn't know that she got her basket before I did. What happened is I fell into the temptation. I skipped to the last page. I thought in the middle of the night that I had already found my Easter basket. I didn't follow the clues. So today we have a passage about a man who wants to skip to the last page. And so what Jesus does is hushes him down. In fact, Jesus sternly warns him not to say anything to anybody, but to go to the priest. And instead, the man goes out and he tells everyone about this secret, this miracle that has just happened. This is the example of the messianic secret. Something great like a miracle has just happened, and Jesus says, now, keep it to yourself. Now, this might sound a bit strange to us. Why keep something like a miracle secret? Why not tell everybody? Why not tell others that Jesus can heal? Why not tell everyone that Jesus can do these things? Isn't that our job, to have the message of Jesus spread to other people? And if that bothers you, we've got one more, I'm going to throw one more wrench into your idea of Jesus. Why does Jesus get so angry? Look at this verse again. After sternly warning him, he sent him away at once. The Greek word is this, and I'm not going to pronounce it, but it just means anger or displeasure or scolding. So essentially, Jesus is saying, do not say anything to anybody, almost like with a finger right there. What you might be feeling right now reminds me of a story once about a gentleman that was a captain of industry. Always used to getting his way, and he was traveling to a meeting, and so he decided to take a little bit of shortcut. And as he was taking this shortcut, he got thoroughly lost. Found a boy that was playing by the side of the road, and goes up to the boy, and he says, "Boy, do you know how to get to David City?" And the boy just kind of, "I don't know." And so then the man just says, "Well, how far is it to Wahoo?" And the boy just, "I don't know." And then the man says, "Well, is there anyone else here that can give me directions?" And the boy just goes, "I don't know." And this goes on and on. Every time the man would ask a question, the boy would just say, "I don't know." And finally, the man loses his cool. He is getting so upset. He says, "Well, boy, you don't know too much, do you?" And with that, the boy kind of looks up at his house and sees his brothers and sisters playing in the yard, and sees his mom on the front porch, and the boy says, "Yeah, I don't know too much, but at least, mister, I ain't lost." You might be feeling a bit lost right now. You might be saying to yourself, well, this isn't the Jesus that we signed up for. This isn't the Jesus that we love and respect. This isn't the Jesus that we have a relationship with. This is a Jesus, according to the scripture that Becky read, treats a newly healed man with contempt. Why? Well, folks, I will tell you on Easter. Well, it's not Easter, so I better keep on preaching. In fact, that's why we need to keep reading the story. Let me give you a little teaser, a hint that really comes from Mark. And folks, I'm telling you, it's right in the text. The idea, the key to understanding the Messianic secret is to remember this question. Why do people not recognize who Jesus is in his lifetime? Let me repeat that. Why do people not recognize who Jesus is in his lifetime? The key there is recognize. Now, I promise it will all be made clear on Easter Sunday morning. I assure you that on April 1st, this concept of the Messianic secret will make sense. Oh, and there's one more thing. You can skip to the last page. You've got your pew Bibles right in front of you if you want to do that. But if you do, I think you're going to be missing a key thing that comes from the Gospel of Mark. So, notice this passage. Saying to him, see that you say nothing to anyone, but go, show yourself to the priest, and offer for your cleansing what Moses commanded, as a testimony to them. But he went out and began to proclaim it freely, and to spread the word so that Jesus could no longer go into the town openly, but stayed out in the country, and people came to him from every quarter. Did you catch that? When I was in high school, English class, we read the Scarlet Letter. And I remember one day we came into class, and a bunch of my female classmates were very upset. So I did some investigating. Some people might call it eavesdropping. And I soon learned that someone had read the end of the Scarlet Letter and was telling all of my female classmates how the book ended. Someone had skipped to the last page and let everything out. Has this ever happened to you? You get to the movie theater and someone lets you in on the plot. You get to the movie theater and you realize that Darth Vader is indeed Luke's father, or that Bruce Willis was actually dead in The Sixth Sense. I'm sorry if I let that out, but bear with me here. When these plot twists are revealed, it kind of ruins things. And I'm telling you, this is serious. They have actually come up with a concept that is called Netflix cheating. Have you ever heard of this? Netflix cheating. It is when two people are sitting and watching a TV show all together, and they watch episode after episode after episode, and one falls asleep and the other one continues to watch. Well, according to the USA Today, 70% said they watched ahead simply because they just needed to see what happens next. 1 in 4, 25%, do this when their partner falls asleep and they keep watching. Why is this serious? Well, according to Dr. Robert Thompson, cheating is a really good metaphor because, for one thing, you're doing it and then not confessing to it. That's why it feels like cheating. You're sneaking it, Thompson explained. First, you have to deceive by sneaking up and finishing it. Then you have to deceive by covering it up because sooner or later the other person says, oh, we got to finish Game of Thrones. And then you have to pretend that you haven't seen the rest of the shows. You have to be careful and not say, oh, in a minute, the most exciting part's going to be coming up. You got to play dumb, and it's very deceptive, and it is a form of cheating. Well, folks, something very similar has just happened here. You see, the leper has just skipped to the last page. He has announced to everyone about Jesus without recognizing who he is. Now remember, the key to the Messianic secret is understanding this question: why doesn't anyone recognize who Jesus is in his lifetime? The leper doesn't recognize Jesus. He has just jumped to the end of the story. He sees the miracles, but not the death and resurrection. He sees the healing, but not the suffering. His faith life has started, and yet he just wants to tell everyone that he knows everything about Jesus. It would be the equivalent of a college freshman walking into a hospital, going up to the administrator and saying, "I'm your new surgeon," and then going to the operating room and getting ready to cut open a body. Or maybe a counselor that hasn't had any training but putting out a shingle and saying, "I'm going to be practicing mental health therapy." Or maybe hiring a cook and they don't know how to boil water. You get the point. There's nothing wrong with these people. Their heart's in the right place. They're dedicated to doing something that they're passionate about. But they're novices, beginners. They are not ready. Jesus is saying, at least here in the Gospel of Mark, you don't know the full picture yet. You see the miracle, and you think you know Jesus. You see Jesus respond with pity, and you think you know God. You see a mighty vision of God, and you think you understand the kingdom of heaven. But where's the recognition of who Jesus is? This is the Messianic secret. And on Easter, only when we have seen and read and experienced all of these stories will we understand. And then, and only then, will we be able to proclaim who Jesus is. Now, my friends, I'm not sharing anything that isn't already out there in public. I mean, you can get out your phones, you can go to the internet, you can type in the Messianic secret. You can find out for yourself what this concept is all about. But I'm here to tell you that if you do, you are going to miss the intent of what Mark is talking about in his story. Let me share something with you. About 3.5 years ago, I met with Bishop Jones at Perkins Restaurant. This came right after I had told Lauren and our then district superintendent that I felt that God was kind of tugging me to come back into the ministry. And as we were sitting at that booth, and I still remember the booth we were sitting at, the bishop asked me, "Seth, why'd you leave the ministry?" And I told him that it all started with an email. You see, I responded to an email when I was being asked, would I start a church in Omaha? And by saying yes to that email, it led to one thing after another. After another, I went to these trainings, and all of these things happened, and the plan failed. It was an absolute failure. Much of it against my control. Things just kind of spiraled out of control. It was ugly. I had to deal with massive church politics. It was not fun. And so I explained to the bishop all of these things. And the bishop said to me, he says, "Seth, is there anything you would do differently?" And I said, "Yes, Bishop, I would have said no to the email." But I then paused and I said, if I would have said no to the bishop, no to that email, I wouldn't have got my business degree. The money that we were saving to buy a home in Omaha, it would not have led us down to Gearing. My daughters wouldn't have come down here. My wife would not have taken a job at PMHC. I would not have had the opportunity to sit in the pews for some 3 years. I would not have had all of these things happen to me. I told the bishop, yes, if I would have said no to that email, I would have not realized all the things that I experienced up at that point. It was painful. I had a lot of tears. But it was a time of learning, a time of exploration, a time for God to put on some extra bark on my life. And so I told the bishop that if I would have said no to that email, I would not have experienced all the things that God had for me at that time. You know, if you ever noticed when you cut down a tree, you got these rings in it. And as you look at these rings, each one represents a year in life. One of these rings, maybe the ring might be a little bit bigger because there was a lot of rain that year and it produced a lot of fruit. Sometimes some of these rings are a little bit smaller, which meant it was a bit drier, and so that tree was sort of trying to preserve its moisture. Now this tree doesn't show it, but sometimes some of these rings are absolutely black, which probably means that a tree survived a forest fire. And I'm guessing is that if we would cut down a tree up at Camp Noweska, we would probably find a tree like that. You know, each ring represents a year of growth. Some painful years, and some years that provided a lot of abundant fruit. Memories that bring tears to your eyes because they were such joyous times. You might have those rings in your life and you remember the time that you met your significant other. Or maybe a baby was born. Or maybe you started that job. Or maybe you decided to turn in your resignation. And maybe you've got some rings in your life that brought some tears of a different kind. Painful moments that you in no amount of time would ever want to relive. But it made you who you are today. Whether for good or ill, all of these rings have an end point. But to get there, you got to keep on reading. You got to learn the story. You got to find out how it ends. It reminds me of one of my favorite stories, and I'm sure I've shared it with you, about a scientist that found a cocoon, a caterpillar that was in this cocoon. And he was watching it after a few days and realized that this caterpillar was not emerging. And so he decided to do the most humane thing, and he got out a scalpel and he kind of made an incision on that cocoon and allowed that butterfly to come out. But as that butterfly came out, he noticed that the color in the wings was not as bright. And in fact, the wings were kind of smaller, and the end point is the butterfly never flew. At that point, he realized that the struggle to get out of that cocoon is what brings those life-giving juices that make a butterfly what we know of them today. The Messianic secret can only be understood if we keep reading, if we keep trying to understand this, if we keep walking this journey of life. The only way to understand this secret is to recognize who Jesus is. So let's keep reading all the way to Easter, because at that point it's all going to make sense. And I implore you, don't cheat now. Don't skip to the last page, because Mark wants you to experience what we can emerge on Easter Sunday morning, to come out like a beautiful butterfly, ready to recognize who Jesus is and ready to share that message with everybody. So let's keep reading the story. Stay tuned.